Wednesday. It is, what is it, October the 21st, second, already October 23rd. Hard to believe. Rob Brown here with the executive producer, Brendan Martin in Ocala, Florida. All right, next hour and change. We got a lot to cover. Going to go a full 60. Brian Matthews, auburnsports.com, joins us in the first segment, followed by Jordan Davis, Hill 24/7 Sports on Georgia, and then Dudley Dawson, hogville.net, Vince Ferrara, 99.1 The Sports Animal up in Knoxville, also part of the major big-time Vol Network. Hey, smash that subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Allow the notifications on your Android or iPhone, and you can watch us live or later. We are all over the place, live on Twitter, live on Facebook, live on YouTube, like 7 channels, and then we go out everywhere, Apple, Spotify, you name it, okay? So, lots to cover. Let's get started right now. Brian Matthews, auburnsports.com. And Brian, I'm just wondering where I can get my CFP tickets for the Tigers and the 12-team playoff in a couple of years, but not this year. I have been watching Auburn football since I was in my mother's womb. I literally think I have. And I've got a Pat Sullivan jersey from when I was a kid that he autographed. Nice. Still love it down there. And I love doing this show because I get as fired up about all 16 of these fan bases as I do my own school. So I want your thoughts on this Auburn team. If ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have lots of money. Is that the old saying? If Auburn had a legit quarterback, what would the record be? It's fun to think. They're not getting curb stomped every week. They're in every game, which tells me the trend is long-term, positive, and as a financial advisor, is a screaming buy sign for the future of Auburn football. Agree or disagree?
Oh, I agree, and I would add that if they had a quarterback and a left tackle, I think they really missed the boat on improving those positions in the transfer portal, and they really didn't have the answers on the roster going into the offseason. So I thought those were two critical areas. When I look at football teams, quarterback, left tackle, wide receiver offense in today's game, cornerback, pass rusher, defensive tackle on defense are all critical positions. And I think Auburn's shortened in several of those, but definitely quarterback and left tackle.
Percy Lewis, I don't know where to start. Why did they bring him over? Were they that desperate?
Well, they missed out on a couple of other tackles they had, graded out higher or were higher on the board. Yeah. I think at that point in time, they weren't as organized. They didn't understand the transfer portal is an area where you have to strike quickly and, push all your cards in early. Carmona, who's over at Arkansas having a good season, they set up an official visit with him, but he never got there because he went to Arkansas before then. So they've got to learn from that, and I think they have, and they brought in some more guys to help out there in the staff and move much quicker, be aggressive, and don't play Mr. Nice Guy, right? They can't afford to do that anymore. They've played their way into not having. Freeze talks about that margin of error with his offense. Well, his margin of error has definitely gone way, way down over the last 7 weeks.
Yeah. All right. Going back in the 90s, and I referenced this yesterday, junior college was big. Mississippi State was the school I used as Exhibit A. But all of a sudden, those guys all leave at once, and, man, it's hard to recover. And as much as people put Lane Kiffin on a pedestal, I think he's a hell of a coach. He's 3-20 against teams with 9 or more wins on the season. And he's going to have 41 guys leave all at once in January when they finish their last bowl game, playoff game, or whatever. What's that telling you about the portal that people aren't paying attention to the past?
Well, I think that you're spot on. I think that the way to build a team to compete year in and year out is through high school recruiting and supplementing that through the portal, Yeah. And I think Auburn's building to that, but they're not close to there yet. That they're going to, well, we'll see. But if things can stay reasonably well enough, they can hold on to this class. They'll sign a top 5 class here in December 4th.
Yeah.
That'll be a top 5 class on top of a top 8 class. So you figure they're one more good class away from starting to stack those things up and starting to have that roster that you want.
Yeah.
And then maybe they'll be in a position where they're not desperate for players in a portal, where they only need a couple guys here and there for depth, or maybe that one guy at a certain position, but not. I've got to have a quarterback. Got to have a left tackle. I got to
Yeah.
have another pass rusher. These are all premium positions that you have to pay extra for. So
Yeah.
Auburn's got to be ready to really really go for it.
Yeah.
Come this December.
All right. So when you look at these freshmen on this Auburn team, man, Caleb Harris, there's DeMarcus Riddick. Expand on those guys because they're if you're looking, you have to look to the future. And you know how everybody knows how Auburn got where they are. So that's trash past. But man, I can't help but get excited if I'm Joe Sixpack out there from Geneva, Alabama.
Oh yeah, and you take a guy like Caleb Harris and add Eric Winters and
Oh,
oh gosh, who's the other safety commitment? Bacon. I mean, those are two superstars. So I feel like that's a position that maybe hasn't been, it's been solid for Auburn at times, but I think it's about to be one of the strongest positions on the team going forward. So
and you got the number one player in Tennessee committed.
yeah, Donovan Starr. Wait, is that Donovan Starr?
Yeah, Donovan Starr. Yeah.
In Tennessee, is he? Okay, I didn't
Yeah,
realize that.
from Ravenwood up there, Brentwood, Franklin. I mean, Metro Nashville. You go up there and see those guys. That's the best football in the state of Tennessee, hands down. I think.
Yeah, I haven't actually hadn't seen the game up there in a while, but yes, there are some good football players up there, and certainly in Memphis too.
Yeah,
You can get some real dogs over there, in
yeah,
my opinion or
yeah,
my experience.
yeah.
But you feel like this class coming in on top of the class they've got here now. You mentioned DeMarcus Riddick, who is a absolute star in the making at linebacker with
Yeah,
his speed, athleticism, and how he plays the game with the kind of ferocity I would describe it.
yeah.
You got some young defensive backs who are starting to play a lot. You mentioned Caleb Harris, but you got Jay Crawford and
Mm-hmm.
Kenzie Lauder-Faustin, who are playing
Yeah,
really well. I mean, Jay Crawford's moved ahead of some veteran guys at corner and earned that starting job, and is performing better than I thought he could. I had no idea he was this good this early in his career. I love the guys on the defensive line, which you really haven't seen take off yet. I mean, we haven't seen the best of Amaris Williams yet, but he's going to be a great player for Auburn.
yeah.
TJ, I want to say TJ Finley every time I say his name, but the other defensive lineman that's redshirting, I think he's going to be a
Lindsey,
terrific player. Yeah, TJ
TJ
Lindsey, thank
Lindsey
you.
out of Little Rock.
Yeah,
Yeah, went to IMG. Yeah,
yeah, going to be a terrific player for Auburn in the future. Um, uh, they've got some young pass rushers in Joe Phillips and Jamonte Waller, who's hurt now, but those guys are going to be really good players this time next year. So they are lining some dudes up, and they need to bring in some more dudes. But yes, you feel great about the future.
when you look at the defensive line, you see Caleb Falk and his younger brother from Highland Home. If you've ever driven from Nashville to Gulf Shores and Orange Beach, you go right by the
Yep.
Hyundai plant. Man, guy weighs almost 290 pounds. He looks like he weighs about 215. That's a freakishly talented athlete. Hell of a player. Talk about the depth on Auburn's front seven and who are the best players of the upperclassmen.
Well, Cutler Falk is every bit of a 5-star. That's what a 5-star
Yeah,
looks like. And
yeah,
for years, well, I don't understand why Auburn doesn't have players that look like Alabama's players. It's because Alabama goes out and sign players like that.
yeah,
And that's what Auburn is starting to do. And they need a team full of Keldrick Falk types at other positions too. They're getting
yeah,
there, not quite there yet. But he's not only a great player on the field, as you've seen, but he is a really humble human being. He's really cares about his teammates. He cares about Auburn.
yeah,
Wants to be a great player. Is a great leader. Was a great leader the minute he stepped on campus. So Auburn, I think, is really fortunate to have him as they go through this process of by transitioning to you hope a team that's going to compete for championships here in the near future. Um, he's special. Of the guys I think that are playing as upperclassmen now, I think you got to give credit to Zeke for stepping up and being a solid player. I don't think he's an all SEC type performer, but he's just getting, he's getting the job done. He's played much better. Um, Bobby Jamison Travis has surprised me with how much he's improved since a year ago. I wondered if he was even going to be in the rotation or play this year in the spring, and he's come on and been, one of Auburn's really talented, hardest working interior defensive linemen. So, and I think he'll be back. So they've got some older guys there, but I think I really think they've got to continue to add, in recruiting and in the transfer portal probably also to continue to boost that area of the team.
Hugh Freeze, he's a hell of a recruiter. He's changed his staff a lot, the staff he's got right now. How do you rate this staff? I know you have to interact with these guys, and I know what that's like. And because if you're going to say something, you have to be willing to say it to them too. But offense, defense, special teams, Alex McPherson maybe comes back this weekend. God, do we need him back if you're an Auburn fan?
Yeah, I think he'll be back to at least kick the short ones.
Okay.
I actually think this is a fantastic staff. Really impressed with it. Obviously, a very good recruiting class, but that's that recruiting at the high level that Auburn's doing now is because of Hugh Freeze. I think in the offensive line, I think they've had some misses there, and they're maybe not as good as they should be after 2 years. I think the wide receiver position has been recruited really, really well, and now they need to be held to a little bit higher standard. I think maybe be a little bit tougher on them, but I think overall, Hugh Freeze has brought in a really, really good staff, and I think they're doing a really good job of repopulating this roster with talented players. And you may not can see it right now, but I think a year from now you'll be able to really see it.
Yeah, that's the tough thing. You look at when you're losing games by 3 and 4 and 6, and you can pinpoint, you're seeing what's happening. I don't think there's an LOE or an LOM going to be stamped on any of these guys' transcript. Lack of effort, lack of motivation. That's not the issue. A couple of more minutes before you go. Deuce Knight, Loosedale, Mississippi. That's Highway 98. That's the old way we took to Destin over there in George County. Is he a special player, in your opinion?
Well, we're going to find out. He certainly has that potential. It's really tough for a quarterback to be a special player.
Yeah.
Georgia signs a 5-star every year, and only one of them out of 3 ends up being, their guy or so. So, but he certainly has that potential. You love his size. I love when I watch this film how calm he is in the pocket. Makes really good decisions, and he adds that versatility of being a really dangerous runner when he decides to tuck it. And I think he's got a really strong arm.
Yeah.
So can he adapt to playing in college and handle those defenses and offenses and handle the pressure? We'll see. But I think he has a chance to be a special quarterback. I do expect Auburn to sign at least one transfer quarterback they'll expect to come in and play right away and not put that pressure on Deuce to be a true freshman starter in the SEC. But I do think he has the potential of being an early contributor and a really good player at Auburn.
All right, one more question, and then let people know how they can follow you. Auburn basketball picked pretty high in the preseason after media days. 2 questions. How many seniors are on this Auburn team, and what's the ceiling on this team, in your opinion?
I think it's 9 seniors.
That's what I thought. That's a record.
I don't have it in my.
It's got to be a record.
I think that's right, which is wild.
Yeah.
I think they have potential to be really good. I am worried about some things, which I guess this is the time to worry about it. I worry about the chemistry. I worry about the leadership. You got a bunch of guys that have been around a while, and are they going to be able to listen to 1 or 2 or 3 guys, or you got some volatile guys on that team sometimes. If you watch them on the bench or on the interacting with Coach Pearl, you can see sometimes they don't always listen. So I don't know how that's going to work. It may work out great. And I love the addition of Miles Kelly. He's a really good shooter. Will shoot from anywhere. I think he's going to be a fun player to watch and give Auburn a little bit more consistency from that 3-point shot. But I just don't know how it's all going to blend together and how it's going to look in February and March. We'll see. But definitely the potential to be one of Bruce Pearl's better teams to compete for championships in the SEC and SEC tournament and we'll see what they can do once we get to March in the NCAA tournament.
All right. How do they follow you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. They can check me out on Twitter/X and Threads at BMATAU. They can check us out at auburnsports.com. And I just want to mention real quickly that my Monday Musings column is sponsored by Uncle Keith's Red Sauce. Get that at Publix, Piggly Wiggly, Renfro, statewide. Go online, use BMAT 15 as a discount code for 15% off your order.
Now what's the name of that sauce again?
It's Uncle Keith's Red Sauce. It's delicious, homegrown right here in the state of Alabama.
Damn right. All right. See you next week. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right. You bet. Jordan Hill, last week, Doug Dean and I were the lone voices in the wilderness picking Georgia to go down there and do a curb stomping on Texas. Nothing against Texas. We got our friend Ken Capps and Anwar Richardson, love them, but I have not felt so good about a game going in as I did, because Kirby Smart, people have opinions on him, but if you're one of his players, what you do know, there are two things. He has your back, and he will fight like hell for you. He's a former player, and he still looks like he wants to be out on that field and play. And look at his reaction after the game with the Georgia fans in Austin. Your takeaways from 30-15. By the way, you beat the number one team on the road, and about 3 people in America gave you a chance. That's a pretty damn good night.
Definitely, and I'll be honest, I was not one of those 3. No one on the Dogs 24/7 staff picked Georgia, and when it came to my hesitation when picking Georgia, I had Texas winning by a touchdown, was I needed to see it from the defense. You know, they struggled in that game, that first half specifically against Alabama, was coming off a pretty poor second half against Mississippi State, and you just kind of wondered if they had it. And they did. That's my big takeaway from Saturday, is that this defense is for real. The pass rush, you know, they've been banged up on the defensive line pretty much the entire season, but they played great. 7 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. Defense forced 4 turnovers. Absolutely outstanding A++ effort by the defense. Offense left a lot of points on the field. I thought that was probably Carson Beck's worst start of the season, and to be fair to Carson, it really wasn't just him. Some tough drops from the receivers along the way as well. But, yeah. I mean, as much as they would want to clean up, and my buddy Ben Wolk, who I work with at Dogs 24/7, said, if you would have told me at the beginning of this week that Georgia's going to beat Texas on the road 30-15, you take it. I think Kirby Smart would do the same thing. You take that win, you jump up. I think they're number 2 in the AP poll right now. You take it, and you try to clean things up in this bye week before you go to Jacksonville.
The running game, Etienne looked pretty damn good. Man, he's a really good running back, isn't he?
Yeah, I think that he's been, I thought on Saturday, his numbers weren't crazy, but I thought he is just such a natural playmaker. He makes a cut and gets past a guy. The run blocking this season has been a little bit lax, and he continues to make them look right. He continues to make plays. And what was really interesting on Saturday, watching it live, I was sort of surprised how much Georgia threw the ball, but a lot of what they were doing, I think, was trying to preserve Trevor Etienne. They're in a situation right now where Branson Robinson, who is the de facto backup, he is out with an MCL sprain. Might be back for Florida. I think it'd probably be the week after that or the week after that. But it's basically Trevor Etienne and then a freshman running back, Nate Frazier. So they had a lot of throws to the outside, a lot of screens. That is part of what Kirby says is an extension of the run game. But, yeah, I mean, I think they know that Trevor Etienne is going to be huge in what they do long term. So I thought they were very smart and very deliberate about not putting too much on Trevor. He did a great job. I think that they keep him healthy. He's got a chance to have a fantastic season. It's going to be a big part of this offense for the rest of the year.
I like the fact that some of the players that have been injured for Georgia would be back on the field against Texas. Mykal Williams really showed up. Is he the toughest dog in the pound? I mean, he is a just true alpha male, and he almost had 3 sacks. That close.
He's outstanding. He got co-defensive player of the week in the SEC along with Jalen Walker, who I would say, if to your question, Rob, if it's not Mykal, it's probably Jalen Walker, because Jalen was outstanding. He He had, I think, 3 sacks in that game. What I thought one of his best plays was one of the series that Arch Manning was in, where Arch took off scrambling to the right, and it looks like he's got, probably 15 yards, and Jalen Walker chases him down and brings him down. And think about the weight difference between a guy like Jalen Walker and Arch Manning. Michael, getting him back was huge. I think that that had to feel good for Michael. He's a guy a lot of people think will be a first-round pick, potentially a top 10 pick. And this season to this point has kind of been lost because of injury. He got hurt in the third quarter of the Clemson game. Ankle injury. He's come back since then and even before Texas, but he was playing limited snaps. He was not playing full go. I thought he was as close to 100% as he's been since that injury. And again, the pass rush deserves so much credit because, again, when we talked about previewing this game, that was my hesitation. Yeah. Could they get after Quinn Ewers? Could they make him uncomfortable? Check, Rob. They did a fantastic job, and Michael Williams was a big piece of that.
Yeah, and here's a Captain Obvious question here from Rob Anderson, a viewer down in Valdosta. Ask Jordan who the Bulldog DB badass was from Folkston, Georgia. I know at least one of them's in the Hall of Fame. That would be Champ and Boss Bailey, but was there a third one?
Gosh, I mean, that's going back to when I was first watching this. I can't remember. Was there another Bailey? There's a bunch of them. I grew, by the time I was really watching, Georgia Boss was coming through, and they were talking about this not that long ago, how great those names were. Champ's pretty good, but I kind of think I'd love to be called Boss. I mean, he played like it while he was at Georgia.
Yeah, well, I like this comment. Buck Wade, Arch has definitely never seen guys that big move that fast. I mean. And it's the learning curve, Georgia, just the size of those guys, the physical gifts that they have, and they just kept coming all night long. Texas had never seen anything like that. They hadn't been hit like that. That's the grind of the SEC. That's why the week after Oklahoma, which they stomped, they beat them 34-3. But Georgia comes in, and the narrative was their secondary was vulnerable, but man. It was what a night. But talk about what they did. And Arch is going to be a hell of a player, I think. Not criticizing him.
Oh, I totally agree. But, I mean, I think that's natural for, he's still just a redshirt freshman.
Yeah.
And, he hadn't seen anything like that. And what I'd say about that secondary, Rob, it started up front, but they did such a good job of rattling Quinn Ewers. Bigger plays that Dalen Everett had, who he had 2 of the turnovers. They just disguised so well. When he blitzed and forced a fumble, he did a very good job of selling that, hey, I'm in man-to-man over here, and didn't give away he was blitzing until Quinn, got the snap. And then he picked off a play later in that first half where he sells that he's in man, and then once the play starts, he lets that guy go, and he sits down in the zone, and Quinn thought, oh, he's going deep with this guy. I'm going to have this guy open. They did a very good job of confusing Quinn Ewers, and a big part of that was that pass rush was coming after Quinn. He didn't have a whole lot of time, to make decisions. It might have been a different story, but complete defensive effort, dominant effort, and again, they did a very good job of picking up an offense that was very hit and miss. I mean, that first half, Georgia's average starting position was the Georgia 44, so they're nearly to midfield every single possession. Texas's was its own 22. I mean, that's a huge swing. And, the offense didn't take advantage of all of those. They had to kick at least one field goal, I remember, in that first half. But defense just they were a huge part of Georgia being able to win this game like they did.
There's 2 reasons I think this Georgia team could finish with a run for the ages. The first, and 1 of 5 on 4th down conversions. Glenn Schumann, Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp. I mean, he's having fun watching his son play at Vanderbilt. But talk about the defensive brain sessions that they have there at Georgia. And when they're healthy, what can happen Saturday night.
Yeah, and hey, let's give a shout out. I wrote about this on Wednesday morning. Glenn Schumann's wife had a baby on Wednesday, so Glenn was dealing with that as well. And Kirby had some fun with him on Tuesday talking about it, and said that I think one of the special teams coordinator, his wife had a baby, and he said, but they waited till the bye week, so they were a little bit more prepared than Glenn and his wife.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, you look at his defensive staff, and as funny as it is, I wrote about this before the game. Yeah. As much success as Georgia's had, they had a lot to prove. There were a lot of questions specifically about this defense. And Glenn Schumann and those guys, they shut up guys like me. And that was the thing, on our board. You'll find this hard to believe, Rob, but there are a lot of people being like, hey, if you're wrong, you need to admit it. And I did. I've done it multiple times. I was wrong. I thought that, this Georgia defense, it seemed like it had taken a step back from these last few years. And, hey, they answered the call on the road. They answered the call against what I still think is a really good Texas team. They deserve so much credit, the brain trust that put that plan together. But, again, players like Michael Williams, Jalen Walker, Damon Wilson, Dalen Everett. There was a lot of guys that made some big plays in that game on Saturday.
Well, I hear you a lot on our mutual friend Chuck Oliver on his great show over in Atlanta. And he pointed out, don't criticize and say Michigan hasn't played anybody. Or Texas hasn't played anybody, because that's detracting from what Georgia did. He said 88% of what happened, that was Georgia. Texas had an off day. Well, yeah. Look who they were lined up against. That really irritates me when people say, oh, we just had a bad night. Well, yeah, if you'd have been playing air, you probably would have won. You were playing Georgia. Is the mindset of Georgia, from what you gather here in the last couple of minutes before we let you go, to win another national championship? They're not content, are they? I don't think they are. Kirby won't let them, I don't think.
They aren't content, but I do believe that they understand the focus has to be week to week, especially understanding that they do have a loss on their record. Yeah. And I think that I'll be very interested once we get into next week. I think Kirby's going to talk up this Florida team, and I will say this Florida team does look better than we thought early in the year. Yeah. I mean, think about how rough it looked in that Miami game. Some of those other games where they struggled, A&M especially struggled in that game. This Florida team has got a little bit of a fire to it. DJ Lagway is now the quarterback with Graham Mertz out. And I'll tell you this, Rob, just this rivalry, it's one of those things that's a very cliche thing with football, but you do have to throw the records out. There have been times that I've gone down to Jacksonville and thought, now they're in Florida wins it, and then it's been vice versa. There's been years where it seemed like Florida, this won't even be a contest. Florida's going to win this one, and Georgia goes down there and surprises. So I think that they are going to really harp on keeping the focus on the next game. But no, I think there's no doubt this team is hungry. They want to go win a title. That's why guys like Carson Beck came back. They want to win a national championship of their own, but they know the focus has to be on the day-to-day, or they're going to have a chance to do that.
All right, one more question before we go, and then let people know how they can follow you. This schedule for Georgia, obviously Florida, at Ole Miss, at home against Tennessee, UMass, and then Georgia Tech. Of these, which one worries you the most besides the next one?
I would say probably that Tennessee game. It's sort of more so because of Tennessee's defense. I think Tennessee has got a very good defense. Their offense has to start faster. They showed a stat during that Alabama game on Saturday. 3 halves with 0 points. The first time that had happened for Tennessee since 3. And you're not going to be able to beat anybody, especially if you're on the road doing that. That Tennessee offense still has to show up. I would say, the Ole Miss game being at Ole Miss complicates it, makes it a little harder, but I do think that this Ole Miss team is not quite to where it's been. And let's say they lose another game between now and Georgia, will that team still be bought in? So I look at that Tennessee game just because really that defense, if Nico gets it moving, maybe they'll have a chance on offense, but I look at that game as the one to focus on. And just looking ahead, to folks that want to follow Dogs 24/7 on Twitter at Jordan Davis Hill, on Twitter at Dogs 24/7, and getting ready. It'll be nice, Rob. We get to watch some more games this week. Georgia's got a bye week, but last week talking, seeing what we're going to watch down there in Jacksonville.
And also, we'll talk some basketball with you whenever you want to, because the basketball dogs and Stedman are trying to make a name for themselves as well. But look, always love having you on here. Thanks, and have a great rest of your week.
All right. Appreciate it, Rob.
You bet. It is bye week for the dogs. Say something real quick about our sponsors. All of them, www.sidelines.live on our website. And great companies like House Industries, ECS House Industries, located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas. That is over in the Delta between Wynn and Jonesboro, about 14 miles north of Wynn. 99,000 square foot warehouse, and they make the best agricultural products that you see out in the fields, the better roller, the pulverizer, the better chopper. They also make the aerators for catfish farms. So the next time you have a fried catfish sandwich, a blackened or grilled catfish, think about it. They're making those aerators that help those catfish become bigger catfish that go on your plate. Proud to have them as a sponsor, as again, like Hewlett and Dunn, boot and clothing company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Get out there, folks. HewlettandDunn.com. They're getting in 30 to 40 boxes a day. Barber, Filson, Duckhead, Pendleton, Schaefer. They've got Ariat, Wrangler, Stetson, over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's boots. Great store, open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And Brendan, our newest sponsor, Landers Ford in Collierville at the corner of Houston, Levy, and Poplar. Go to the website, LandersFordMemphis.com. Michael Jordan, great friend of ours, watches the show every day. Yesterday, he says, hey, who do I talk to at Landers Ford about getting a vehicle? I said, call Brad Bellamy, the general manager. He did it, called me a couple of hours later and said, man, that's the easiest thing I've ever done. Went out there, salesman took me out, rode me around, bought a brand new Ford Bronco. So love it when our viewers support our sponsors. That's what it's all about. So Dudley Dawson, hogville.net. What can I say about that beautiful background? And when Dudley comes back in here with us, and Dudley, I'm not seeing you, but I do see some beautiful foliage up there in the northwest corner of Arkansas. That looks like it's the view outside of your window. Are you with us? Yeah. Well, it looks hopefully Dudley will come back in here with us. But let me get something going here. What I'm seeing in college football, people, everybody is in an uproar about what happened with the officials in the Texas Georgia game. Okay, and Brent and Vince is here. I think the optics on it were what was the problem, Vince, when the call, there was no pass interference and it was pretty obvious. And then the Texas students threw some knives and forks and spoons and plastic bottles and God only knows what else onto the field. Steve Sarkisian goes over there and tries to calm them down, and he did. They picked it up, but the officials waited 3 or 4 minutes, and then they changed back to the call. It should have been within 10, 15 seconds. It would have looked better. Do y'all think that the mob rule is going to take over in college football to where every time the fans don't like a call, they're going to throw stuff all over the field? I'll start with you, Dudley, on that. It's kind of crazy.
Well, I do think that certainly that was a bad precedent. That I do think with Matthew McConaughey and the Texas people coming out the next day and saying we're better, $250,000 fine that I guess will be donated to Georgia. That will help it a little bit. There have been a few other throwing incidents at places over the years and hadn't gotten to. Fans will disagree with calls, but throwing stuff, that's just not what you do.
Yeah, it is. It's frustrating. And Vince, come back in here when you can. But Dudley, want to talk about first the Arkansas LSU game. I felt like the team that ran for north of 160 yards, controlled the ground game, would win that game. I thought it'd be close, and it would come down to obviously the line of scrimmage and turnovers. Your takeaways from that game Saturday night up at Reynolds Razorback Stadium.
Yeah, I'm going to give you credit for that because you sent me that ahead of time. That wasn't one of those games or after the game. It was before the game, and so very, very impressed with your accuracy. I think people are disappointed up here because they had the opportunity and a bye week to really put together another monumental win, but LSU was far more physical than Arkansas. Travis Williams was not able to do with Nico, and so they were, he was able to. They just flew down the field. Often was penalties, which they had tons of. Score might have been much worse if if LSU had. It was telling that at the end of the ball game, Sam Pittman said that's the best team we've played all year.
Yeah, and it was tough because there's a lot of momentum, but you've still got Ole Miss coming up there. You still got Texas coming up there. You play at Mississippi State Saturday, so we're gonna start bouncing around. Vince, watching the game on the color TV, that direct TV is mighty expensive. The neighbors had the blinds pulled up, and so we had the telescope out. We just always hope they don't go do the devil's work when they get excited after a touchdown or something. But damn, that's 2 in a row up in Knoxville. And it was pretty cool. Audrey's cousin Mark had his big tailgate, and Roman Harper went over there for his 3rd straight year of eating brisket and, just hanging out and having a cocktail. And Roman had one of his sons up there with him. He had a cigar in his pocket, I noticed in the picture. I guess Roman didn't take that thing out and smoke it, but the Vol fans did. But they didn't tear down the goalpost this time. There was no big celebration. Did they?
They did.
The blinds were down on the neighbors. That's the problem. Don't pull the blinds down. Talk about that post-game celebration.
Yeah, and, they let the media down the field with about 5 minutes to go in the game. By the way, great to be on with you guys. Always appreciate the opportunity.
Love it.
Last 5 minutes, they let us go down there. I've covered a ton of Tennessee home football games, a lot of big ones. And I can't remember more people on the sideline than there were. I mean, former athletes, Tennessee baseball players, and all different sports, and anyone had a VIP sideline pass was there. Plus, you put all the media down at the bottom, down the field at the end. So I was down there, and after Will Brooks made the interception of Jalen Milroe to close the game out. As soon as I started to smell cigar smoke, I'm like, I'm out of here.
Yep.
I'm not a fan personally. To each his own. If you want to do it, and as a tradition, and I know a lot of those people that smoke the cigars and that as that celebration in that rivalry probably don't smoke at all, or that's the only time they smoke. But
yeah,
I got out of there. Luckily I was near the tunnel where the post-game press conference was, and I also wondered if fans would rush the field or try to tear down the goalpost. I was hoping they wouldn't do either one, but I was getting out of there because 2 years ago, I was on the other end of the stadium, actually right at the goal line where Chase McGrath's field goal just barely got over the crossbar. Mm-hmm. But I had to go all the way to the other side of the stadium to get to the post-game press conference, and just got knocked around big time. First by cheerleaders, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Running out on the field, and then all these different directions. But anyway, I didn't want to get caught in that, and so I got out of Dodge. And then you start to see the videos of it, and it was a slower build this time. Thankfully, they were able to kind of hold the fans off until they got Alabama off the field. That's one of the big concerns about these things, the field storming, is the safety of the athletes.
Yeah.
So they were able to do that. And because it was kind of a slow build, and it kind of started, I heard people say this, and you saw some video. I certainly didn't see the video of the whole stadium, but it started with recruits. Recruits jumped off. They were in the end zone, and they jumped onto the field and were running out there. Now, I don't know. They may have just wanted to go out and celebrate with the players and not start a field storm. But I think that opened the door for everyone else to say, hey, we can do it too. And then eventually it got out of control, and then they tore down the goalpost. Tennessee, I don't think, was expecting that because it wasn't collapsed or anything. It was yanked and broken, not where it was supposed to, from fans hanging on to it. And then they weren't able to get it out, safely, like they were able to, and clear the way and get it to the river like last time. But if you look at videos of that, you guys find videos of that. Look at how many people are doing this.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
90% of those kids, all the students are doing this, either shooting it or shooting themselves there. That's what this field storming is all about. Not because it's deserving or worthy, is because of our society on social media, and everyone wants to get clicks and likes and views and shares. That's what all this storming is all about.
Yeah, I mean, Dudley, you see it. And Arkansas has the 007. They push the button and it goes, that goes down. That's pretty cool. But they were storming the field when we were up there for the Tennessee game. But, yeah, it's everywhere now. It's just common. Yeah. And I'm surprised nobody has been trampled.
I tell you what, I do that 61 anymore to the field when I think there's even a possibility of that happening. I'm not gonna take a run over from cheerleaders. It sounds like my friend did there.
Yeah,
the previous time, but yeah, schools have gotten pretty good at lowering the goalposts and being ready for that. But obviously, it'd been a minute, or not many minutes, when Tennessee had the opportunity to beat Alabama and got that done. What a huge win for them. For Mr. Coach DeVore is, again, following the man is tough. You want to be the man that follows the man that follows the man. And I think he's a great coach, but, they're up in arms down there with 2 whole losses in October.
Yeah. Well, you guys, Robbie mentioned, thankfully nobody got hurt. We haven't really heard of, reports of anything significant. That doesn't mean anyone didn't get kind of banged up. Jimmy Himes said he had a couple of students fall on him after dealing with security. Security is trying to keep Jimmy Himes out, but then all these students are running all over the place. So, and then students kind of fell on him, so his knee was bothering him a little bit. And then Trey Wallace from Outkick, super guy, great reporter, he got hit in the forehead by the goalpost that they were moving around. Now, he wasn't cut up or anything. He just had, a little bit of a headache and stuff. So hopefully Trey's doing okay. But there's plenty of the people getting banged up from that kind of stuff. You just can't avoid it.
Yeah. I guess Trey's in the 7-day concussion protocol right now.
Yeah. Perhaps. Yeah. Thankfully open week for Tennessee, but there's other SEC games. Maybe he won't. Yeah.
Well, and I just think that the excitement in college football is what Vince said. It's a copycat society, and everybody sees everybody else going down on the field, and they want to do the same thing. But the interest, guys, it really is. To me, every weekend you look at what's on TV and you go, how do we outdo last weekend? And I think a lot of people, my son, now Wilson, we love to pick these games. We thought Indiana and Nebraska would be a good game, but the Fighting Cignettis of Indiana, Kurt Cignetti, 56-7. That was just Nebraska doesn't lose games like that, though they didn't used to, but they do now.
Man, are they good? Or is Indiana good or what? I mean, they took out Patrick Mahomes in Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean,
he looks just like him.
Yeah,
doesn't play like him, but looks like him.
Dylan Relaya or whatever. Yeah, the freshman. But guys, when you look around, let's get back and take a look at the SEC. Every weekend you've got a loser leaves town match. Ole Miss hosting Oklahoma. Well, Oklahoma, they fired their offensive coordinator Monday. Their defense is pretty good, but they got a quarterback mess there. Ole Miss, what the motto coming into this season was playoffs or bust. And in January, they're going to have 41 players on this team. They're done. I mean, that's and plus whoever else goes into the portal. I think every weekend you've got those kind of storylines, Vince. I mean, Tennessee, again, this weekend, the Vols are off, and they've got Kentucky the next week and Mississippi State, 2 home games in a row. Is Tennessee getting better? We referenced it a minute ago. 3 straight games with 0 points in the first half, first time in 61 years. Yet they're in the hunt for the playoffs. It's a weird world we live in.
Yeah, after a whole lot of doubting and people some people proclaiming that the season was over after the loss to Arkansas, have to kind of walk that back a little bit. The ESPN's percentages, you take them for what they are, 67% to make the college football playoff. And look, it comes down to them taking care of their business in the games that they're supposed to, like you mentioned, Kentucky and Mississippi State coming up. Obviously, UTEP they will after Georgia, but Georgia on November 16th. If that game is the big game. Now, if they take care of business, then you got Vanderbilt to close out. If they take care of their business against all those other teams and then lose to Georgia, then they're a 10-2 regular season team. I don't think that's a guarantee for Tennessee to get in. And the loss to Arkansas, how does that balance with the win over Alabama? What is Alabama at that time? What is Arkansas at that time? If both of them decline, then that hurts your resume if you're sitting there, being compared to other two lost teams. This notion that people had going into the year, well, two lost teams from the SEC, they're getting in. I didn't think so. Not with Missouri's. Missouri was in that spot, and maybe they could be. I didn't think it was automatic because as weak as their schedule is. But these schedules normally aren't as good or aren't the same as you think they were. Arkansas is better than what people projected. Vanderbilt certainly is better than what people projected. And maybe Alabama won't be when it's all said and done. So in Oklahoma, North Carolina State are not as good. So how does that balance? How does it look in the end? Does NC State or Oklahoma, do they turn it around late in the year to where that's not as weak as it looks right now? So much of this just depends on how they finish. And I'm okay with that. A lot of people like the philosophy of, did you beat a ranked team when you played them? Well, I don't think Tennessee deserves credit for being North Carolina State as a top 25 team. They stink.
I agree with that.
So, but so many people will say, well, Tennessee beat a top 25 team and Oklahoma the same way. They were overrated when they were overranked when they played them. So it's where it ends up. And I know that's different than the state of those teams when you played them, but I think that's the best way to gauge them is the quality of team in the end. And that's why these targets are always moving. So that's what it comes down to for Tennessee's is if you beat Georgia, then you're in and you take care of your own business. If you don't misstep and lose to someone, you don't. If you take care of your business, you're competitive against Georgia and maybe lose a close game, then you're leaving it up to the committee. Maybe they get in, maybe they don't.
Yeah. All right. A question for you real quick before we go to Dudley. I love it. Blind Squirrel Sports, man. This guy's a serious Georgia fan. Any thoughts on an Alabama assistant coach walking into Neyland Stadium with a cigar in his mouth?
There was video of that. I guess video and I guess it was more of a still photo, but yeah, that was out there and walking into the stadium through the tunnel and everything. That was like outside to inside, underneath the stadium, not like out on the field where I don't know that he thought people would see him. Yeah. There was that. And people have noted that. Tennessee fans have noticed that. Man.
Hubris. Sure. I mean, yes. I know. And are you serious? Do you think there's any place in the world there's not a camera that's not being filmed these days? I mean, I think about that all the time. Yeah.
Well, today's redneck word of the day is mayonnaise. Mayonnaise, a lot of cameras in that stadium. There's a bunch of them. I bet you Brendan could tell us we're having some issues where we can't see him today, but I bet you there might be 64 cameras there.
Yeah.
So Big Brother is at every game.
What a strange season so far. I had Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt as the bottom three teams in the league. I think most people did. And right now, I mean, you could argue that Auburn and Oklahoma are battling for that option right now. And, it's going to be interesting these last few weeks, the narratives of head coaches who got extensions, head coaches who want extensions, and head coaches who aren't going to get extensions. how it plays out these last few weeks, there's so much still left to be decided. Arkansas wants to go to a bowl. Obviously everybody does. You've got to beat Mississippi State. You've got to beat Louisiana Tech, who I've watched again. I think I've watched Louisiana Tech every Tuesday or Wednesday this season.
Must-watch TV, I might add.
That cannot be your goal as a program to win 6 games and get to a bowl. You got to have a higher standard than that. But when you're coming off a 4-win season, when you were about to sack your coach, as they say in soccer, and I guess that's the thing you'll get to. And then we're going to have, if they get to 6 and go to a bowl, we're going to have a wave of people saying that's not enough. The buyout goes down. Nothing's been decided around here, I'm sure. They are better than they were last year, that's for sure. But they laid an egg last Saturday night when they had the opportunity to maybe take a step through another secure door.
Yeah, I got to ask a question here. I love these questions. Ellis Hall, I wonder if he's Jethro Tull's brother in the jungle. I did a book report on him in 5th grade. My older sisters were like, you want to do something cool, Jethro Tull? My teacher was like, how do you know that? I go, I've got older sisters. And Vince and Dudley, y'all remember back in the day when you went and bought an album, you brought it home with 5 of your best friends and you went upstairs and you opened up the windows and you just listened to it and you knew every word. So Peaches Records. But after your 25th birthday, how often do you go to a record store? After your 8th birthday, how often do you sleep in the top bunk of bunk beds? I just thought I'd throw that out there. All right, got a question for you, Dudley. Then we'll go back to Vince. Notre Dame, here's Rob Anderson, Valdosta, Georgia. Notre Dame is a muffin. Navy and Army both have a puncher's chance against the Irish.
Absolutely.
Dudley? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I've watched both those teams, and they're legit. I mean, they're real. They play different brands of football than a lot of other teams do. They don't make mistakes, and we know how big that is in today's college game. If you handle your business and don't give the other team opportunities, you certainly have a chance. I'll be watching both those games and probably back-to-back Army-Navy games. Yeah. They might have to play in the playoffs. In addition, also the Ellis, Indiana's quarterback does have a broken thumb. I can't remember off the top of my head whether it's his throwing hand or not.
It is.
It is. Okay.
Wow.
And that's going to be tough for them. See how quick he can get back. But they've got a lot going on for them there besides the quarterback. So, I mean, just Google the man. Like he says, just Google me.
Curtis Rourke. The good news for Indiana, and I'm happy for this, is it's not season ending. He's going to miss this weekend, and then there's a chance they could get him back after that. The interesting thing, kind of connecting back to the SEC, is the quarterback that took over for him when he got hurt last game, and now will be their starting quarterback until he comes back, is a former Tennessee quarterback in Taven Jackson. He went 7 for 8, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns, and filling in for Rourke in their blowout of Nebraska, and now he comes back. So those one-time balls keep popping up everywhere all over the country. But good for Indiana, because I think that's an awesome story.
Well, and that's the story is, and Dudley, you saw how quickly he jumped on it, and you do too. Y'all cover Tennessee, you cover Arkansas, the SEC, but you also cover the big picture of college football. You're not
doing your job if you just stay specifically on your team, because you're not getting the enough evidence to judge it. You can say, hey, that win versus Tennessee was great. That loss versus LSU was great. But what did those teams do the other weeks? And what's going on in the rest of college football? It's not just we call ourselves beat writers or whatever for school, but you got to know more if you're going to make the impact that the consumer wants you to.
Yeah, and you have to know what's going on because, again, the tectonic plate theory is what I call it, the shifts in the earth, the earthquakes. You've got fault lines, and what happens in the SEC, there are repercussions all over the country. And seeing these military schools do what they're doing without the portal, without NIL, it's a beautiful thing to watch. It really is. And also – the funnest thing about doing this show, Brendan and I, he's got Gator Bait Media, him and his dad, Buddy, and great show Monday through Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, right on this channel, the Buddy Martin Show. Also, the best Fridays in football they do with Coach Urban Meyer. And also we do SECU, where we do some specialty podcasts where I might get you two gentlemen on here just to talk about what it's like being a beat writer and covering a team day in and day out. It is, hey, there are a lot of 18-hour Saturdays, and that might be giving you 6 hours too much sleep, because when you got to go, you got to go. And, I learned a lesson in college, and I would, when I was about to graduate, working for the TV networks. The Iron Bowl was played on a Friday, but I had to be down there Thanksgiving Day. And I said, I broke my streak of having Thanksgiving dinner with my family. My parents said, that's life. Welcome to it. Why do you throw some kids in there? So I remember about 11 o'clock that night, I was at a friend's house, and I got a half of a turkey sandwich. So I kept the streak going.
It's an interesting existence we live. Like, I won't be at the Mississippi State game this weekend.
Yeah.
Starts at 11:45 at Mississippi State. They decided an 8 p.m. basketball charity game with Arkansas and Kansas would be what to do this weekend. Not to be confused with 2 weeks ago when they had a bye week and they decided baseball games with Oklahoma State would be good to put in there. I'm just saying, gosh, you're killing me here.
Well, it's fun. Vince, I mean, when I was in Fayetteville, Baum Stadium, good God. That looks like a major league park on a smaller scale. But, Vince, you're part of the Vol Network. Y'all have like an 8-hour pregame show. It's incredible. I mean, it is just, the Vol Network, from Memphis to the Great Smoky Mountains and everywhere in between. This is the Vol Network. At one time, they had 157 affiliates on there. It's different now with satellite and a lot of the AM stations that used to go kind of way down after dark have been replaced by FM, whatever. But the Vol Network is one of the greatest grassroots efforts in the history of college broadcasting, and you're part of it. That's a big deal.
I appreciate it. A number of things to what you guys have just been talking about on that subject, with kind of very similar to Dudley. There's a basketball exhibition game on Sunday. So much for the open week, right?
Yep.
Indiana, ironically enough, coming down for an exhibition for charity, and so that'll be Sunday afternoon. Tennessee baseball is playing some exhibition games at different spots in the state. I'm not going to those, but that's something else also that I think one's in Chattanooga, another one's in the west part of the state. So opportunity kind of go around and let everyone see them, and they've made their scrimmages available to where, even though the stadium's under construction, out in the outfield, there's a little section there where you can go in and watch them. So they've been very open door on that standpoint. So there's a ton going on right now. This overlap right now, and Dudley, this overlap in October and in November, it is the busiest time of the year with so much going on. You add the women as well. It's crazy right now. Now, you guys,
the beautiful white patriot said, "What days are you off this week?" I said,
"Right." And holidays has always been something. Over time, you get to sprinkle them in. I've gotten to sprinkle them holidays off a little bit more, but normally, man, for years it was like, well, I got to work on Thanksgiving, or I got to, you're filling in for something else, for somebody else, or whatever. There's always opportunities or need for work depending on your situation. But we were talking about the SEC having perspective on other teams, Rob, as you mentioned, and we appreciate that. I remind people every year, especially around SEC football media days time, when we're talking about other teams around the league, and there's some, you guys know this, some that are so blinders to their team, they're like la 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 when you start talking about anyone else. They don't want to hear anything else. It's only about their team, as if nothing else matters, which is wrong, because you have better perspective on your team when you know what's going on around you, kind of what you guys are talking about. And I remind people all week long during media days, look, this is about learning where Tennessee falls in the grand scheme of things. Maybe your opinion will change on Tennessee. Maybe it'll improve. Maybe it'll get worse. But at least you know what else is going on around you, because you're not playing the games yourself against yourself. There's other teams that are involved in the grand scheme of things, especially now with the college football playoff. It matters what everybody else is doing so much more these days. And then real quick on Army Navy, I agree with both of you guys. I absolutely think both of those teams can beat Notre Dame. I think I think Navy has the better chance against Notre Dame than Army. Navy has them this weekend. Army has them later, because now you're talking about a week's prep for that offense. When they play Army, very similar to where Notre Dame would have already gone through it a little bit. Maybe they make some adjustments for Army when they play them in the second to last week. But what has made both of those teams, especially Navy, different is now they have a little bit more of a throwing element to that triple option offense. So now it makes them tougher to defend. They're playing with a ton of confidence. I actually like Navy this Saturday against Notre Dame.
It's going to be a fun one. And in the past with Navy, watching them play Memphis with the triple option, they needed to complete about 6 passes a game, because then the linebackers, everybody had to back up a little bit. And then the running game had that 5-7 yards of carry. But It was the 6 completions. But our good friend Dave Tompkins, who's a big part of our show every week, a West Point grad, Alabama fan from Birmingham, loves his, Black Knights of the Hudson. Bryson, hell of a quarterback. The Heisman this year is so wide open. A couple of weeks ago, Jalen Milroe had already booked a flight. It's just not how it works. This year is keeping everybody on the edge of their seats. All right, real quick.
One thing about it, if it was simply an award on who has had the best season, there's no doubt that my vote would be would be voted for the Boise State tailback. He's averaging 10 yards a carry.
Right. It's unreal. And what I heard on this show was that Boise took all their NIL money and sold all the potatoes they could and put it into that guy, Ashton Genty. Averaging almost 10 yards a carry, guys. It's not almost.
It's over 10 yards a carry. It's a first down a carry.
That's unheard of. And I remember a guy that, 7.4 yards a carry is the best I can remember. James Brooks out of Warner Robins, Georgia.
Jalen Wright last year, that was his yards per carry. He was second in the nation, Tennessee running back. It was the highest among running backs, second only to Jaden Daniels in overall players in yards per carry. Yeah.
Yeah, and those are amazing stats. And I'll tell you, my guy for who I want on my side in a barroom brawl, ain't no question, Diego Pavia. Remember Jackie Gleason in the great movie Smokey and the Bandit? He went in there and he goes, "What are you going to have, sir?" He goes, "I'll have a Dr. Pepper and a Diablo sandwich." Well, Diego Pavia, I can't wait to see. If Vanderbilt gets to 8 wins, and Jerry Kill, his coach, 174 victories. He's so unappreciated. But, Diego, that's his hero, who he looks up to. He draws inspiration because of all the health nightmares that Jerry Kill has been through. I don't know Diego Pavia, but I think he'd do well on this show because, the First Amendment is alive and well here. We don't drink the Kool-Aid. Somebody said earlier in the show, "I'm out. This is an Auburn pep show." I'm like, wait a minute. I'm harder on Auburn than I am anybody. And real quick, Vince and Dudley, what are your way too early predictions for Arkansas and Tennessee basketball? And Dudley, first off, Jim and Pat McClellan, our host up there in Fayetteville. I'm something coming up in November over in Little Rock about a luncheon to go to with those same guys. Absolutely love those people up there, and they're bouncing off the walls about John Calipari. I know what he was like in Memphis. He lived next door to Bishop Stibe. He lived by the right guy. But man, give us a Cliff Note version of Arkansas basketball. Then I'll let you do it, Vince, and then we'll wrap up.
I think Elite 8 contender, maybe a Final Four team for Arkansas, but they may be the 5th or 6th best team in the SEC.
Yeah, that's life in the SEC now, isn't it?
Yep.
Wow. Vince?
Yeah, my prediction is that Jonas Adu and John Calipari are going to be heavily booed in Thompson Bowling Arena. That's my lock of the week. How's that? I think these two teams will
lock
be
of the week
down the road.
Well, and also I like, Mike White, what he's doing at Georgia at the Stegman Mausoleum. They do need to spruce up Stegman Coliseum, but Mike White's a good coach. He played at Ole Miss. And folks, if you've never watched this show before, here's how we break it down. You got the preseason, competitive season, postseason, and the offseason. We never take off, but we keep football going year round, and we love college basketball and we love college baseball. These two guys' most favorite sports, if I had to guess, are baseball. The great baseball writers are like listening to William F. Buckley or Hal Holbrook do a narrative on National Geographic Channel about the Lewis and Clark expedition. To hear y'all wax eloquently about baseball is a treat. I mean, because there's no greater sport to attend in person than a baseball game. It's a little bit more laid back. You're sitting there eating a hot dog, drinking a cold beer. Football, even when I drive by Legion Field, the old gray lady over in Inslee, to this day, as an adult, my stomach gets up in my throat from all of the nail biters and going to the Tiger and Tide liquor store and parking your car and giving some guy $20 and hoping it's going to be there after the game. And it's always there. And we used to give those people beer and hang out with them. It was so much fun, but life changes. But I'll tell you one thing. The fans are, you think about this. We all follow our schools, but watching and listening to what y'all do, y'all are true grit journalists. And I think what we're seeing right now is this 12-team playoff is making us pay attention like never before to games all over the – we're all dialed in on Ashton Genty, the running back for Boise, who is on pace to break the 2,628 yards that Barry Sanders out of Wichita Falls had – or Wichita, Kansas is where he's from, in 1988 when Pat Jones was his coach. I mean, it's a great season, man. Y'all's closing comments, Dudley, and let them know how they can follow you.
I think we appreciate the kind words. I think it's always important to remember that you work for the fans, that you don't work for yourself. You got to always write and tell a story as if nobody saw it, whether it was the most watched game ever. And you've always got to do one thing: respect the fans, but also inform them.
Yeah, and
Dudley.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's beautiful. Hogville.net and what's your Twitter?
Yeah, Dead Sports, DED Sports, and then Fearless Friday on the high school stuff.
Gotcha.
On Austin Genty, we may see him in the college football playoff in a national spotlight type of situation where anyone that hadn't been following him will get a chance to see how special he is. He's using a lot of his NIL money for endowment scholarships for future student athletes at Boise State. So love to see that. Wow. And just incredible. And then on Vanderbilt, 5 wins. You got Texas, Auburn, South Carolina, LSU, Tennessee. They're going to have to pull another shocker to get to that 8-win mark you were talking about, Rob. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing. You just never know in college football. That's why we love it. You can follow me on all the socials. It's Vince Sports, VINCE Sports. And then on our website, 991thesportsanimal.com, you can see replays of our show, interviews. We got Rick Barnes on the show live on Friday to talk about that exhibition. We got VFL Matt Sims, a national analyst. And then we had Blind Squirrel Sports ask Dylan Sampson, 5.8 yards per carry is his question. Is he the best running back in the SEC? I do believe so. 17 touchdowns, just a machine. He really kept Tennessee afloat offensively during their stretch of 3 straight games with no points in the first half, yet Tennessee won 2 of those games. And Sampson and the defense, elite defense, big part of that.
You know what's the big key? You know what's the big key for Vanderbilt getting to 8 wins to me is Diego, leave them Broadway girls alone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, on Broadway. Get the Drifters playing that song.
Wrong Broadway.
I love the Drifters, man. But, and that cool thing about it is that every weekend you can't sleep on this stuff because, nobody saw Vandy over Bama, and Bama never led in that game. If what they wanted to do was draw more eyeballs every weekend, they're right. And to go back to what Lee Fitting, executive producer, I think director of ESPN, said, when you start getting people in the South paying attention to games in the Pacific Northwest in mid-November, you have accomplished what you want, and that is creating national interest. I've never paid more attention to Cal and Stanford in my life, but now you do because they're coming down here. So it is a beautiful thing to watch. So, guys, look, great show as always. Tell your friends, families, and neighbors about us. Check out all of our sponsors, sidelines.live. And again, Landers Ford in Collierville, they are open Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Service department, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Michael Jordan been out there yesterday, called it. Who should I call? Said Brad Bellamy, the GM. Less than 2 hours, he had him a brand new Ford Bronco, and that thing looks awesome. I'm looking forward to going mudding in it this weekend when we're pumping out duck pits, the sexy part of duck hunting. See y'all tomorrow, folks. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Don't forget it, and go help other people every chance you get. Thanks.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.